This conference will now be recorded.
What was that noise?
Okay, that's a horrible echo, whoever is echoing.
I think it's at caller number 5.
Sounds like radar.
It's got to be one of our new callers. I'm gonna mute all the other callers if that's okay.
Everyone but for one.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we'll get started. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the West Goshen Township Board of Supervisors on May 19th, 2020 through our teleconference. We'll start with our agenda for each of us to be able to pledge together for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag of the United States of America and to the
and to the
republic
republic
for
for
which
which it stands, one nation,
nation
God,
under
indivisible,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
for all. Thank you. Item number 2 is just a summary for those who may not have been on prior teleconference calls, that at the beginning of the meeting, we will take the roll call for the members, staff, and professional service providers present, a roll call of those members of the public present on the teleconference. Each person speaking shall announce their identity at the beginning of comments. Public comment will be permitted only when specifically requested of the public just before each vote is taken or at the end of the meeting before adjournment. Each item requiring a vote will proceed with a motion and a second, followed first by member comments and questions only when prompted by the chair, and then second by public comments, questions, but only when prompted by the chair. Voting shall be done by roll call of each member for each vote. Thank you. So we'll move on to the next item, the reports of the month of April 2020 from, I believe, Lieutenant DeMedio, who is standing in for Chief Gleason.
Yes, thank you. Madam Chair, I report to you the West Goshen Police Report for the month of April 2020. In the month of April, we responded to 1,593 calls for service, 57 alarms, 15 automobile accidents, and we patrolled 10,284 miles throughout the township. We continue our selective enforcement, traffic enforcement throughout the township, hit several areas in the township. Those roads include Green Hill Road, Paley Pike, Pottstown Pike, Boot Road, South Five Points Road, Marshall Street, Grove Road, Phoenixville Pike, and Westtown Road, just to name a few. Our career development program has certainly been compromised through the pandemic. However, fortunately with technology, officers have been able to maintain several of their required yearly recertifications through Pennsylvania Virtual Training Network, something that's set up through PennDOT, or Harrisburg, and the MOPEC training organization. So they've been able to keep that going, so we're not falling behind on that at all. The Lexipol daily training bulletins, which we put out once a month. We put 30 training bulletins out once a month that question the policy, and the officers read a scenario and have to respond to the question at the end. So it keeps officers up on their policy, on our policy, excuse me. All off-site non-virtual training has been canceled due to the pandemic. So we're working through that. I just wanted to say, we continue to reevaluate our approach to the operations of the agency, just to assure, that we maintain a level of service that our residents are committed to, or are expected to have, and are used to receive, and that the service that they deserve. We do appreciate, and I just want to reiterate, I know Chief Gleason has mentioned this in a few meetings and postings. We really appreciate the public's patience and understanding, through this pandemic. We are taking different approaches to our service, doing a lot more phone calls, virtual contacts with residents. So we do really appreciate it, and they seem to be responding very well to how we're responding to their needs. So thank you, Madam Chair, and that is what I have, all I have.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the board? And we'll move to item
Sean
number.
Walsh. I have a question for Lieutenant DeMedio.
Thank
Yes.
you.
I noticed that the vehicle mileage was about 50% of what it had been. April's mileage was about 50% of what it had been in March and was below 50% of the same month last year. Is that reflective of what you just stated regarding the much higher frequency of using phone contact with residents to deal with issues?
Yeah, so we're seeing exactly what you're saying. Instead of responding to the calls, training is down. Like I said, training is down. So that mileage, some of that mileage is also encompasses vehicles that officers are taking to training and so forth. So that's obviously down. But exactly what you said, it's they're using phone calls to respond to the residents rather than rather than respond to their house. We've also had requested officers reduce their contact for obvious reasons. So the traffic enforcement has been down. Citations are down. We're trying to keep the officers safe by that. So that also increases mileage just by the more aggressive traffic enforcement.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I have a question for the lieutenant. Lieutenant, on the alarms,
Yes.
all the 57 alarms that are on the report there, apparently they're all false alarms. Is that correct?
Correct. There was no valid alarms for April.
I noticed in the listing of the alarms there's seems to be some alarms which are occurring over the entire month. Several alarms, such as from NV Homes, for example. Is there an issue there with that alarm system that they're just tripping with a false alarm, and what can be done to deal with that?
It could be a number of reasons. Some of the alarms are absolutely, most of the alarms that we're getting duplicates of are technical issues. I don't know specifically the NV Homes. I think it's because it's new and it's the building phases, and I think they have a lot of contractors coming in and out. Maybe the communication is bad, with the builder and the contractor for that. But there could be a number of reasons, but that's probably attributed to that.
Well, after you get a certain number of false alarms, are they cited for there being an issue here? Because if there was some technical issue on their end, it's almost like the kid crying wolf. After a while, you begin sending out all these false alarms, and then the natural attitude of the police department will be, there goes another false alarm again, and that could become problematic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And to answer the first question is, yeah, they do get fined after the third. They get the 3 false alarms a year, then they start receiving fines from the township or from the police department.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Any other comments from the board? All right, hearing none, we'll open up to Board of Supervisors announcements. Anyone have anything they need to share today?
Yes, Robin, this is Sean. I have a couple of announcements.
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
Just the first announcement is that on Wednesday, May 13th, there was a joint committee meeting of representatives of the West Goshen Sewer Authority and with Robin as chair of the Township Board of Supervisors, together with township staff and Josh Fox from HRG, who is the Sewer Authority's consulting engineer. The purpose of the session was to review the 10-year forward view of capital project investments identified for the sewer collection system and treatment plant, the expected scope of the projects, and the projected cost and timing of each of the individual projects. The committee also was provided with information on the Sewer Authority fund balances and the projected revenues over the 2021 to 2030 time period. It was agreed that finance staff and the authority treasurer would perform further financial modeling of the authority cash flows and fund balances over the period and to meet again in July. And it was discussed that the information would then be presented to the full Board of Supervisors in a public meeting in the fall time frame as part of the overall budget review process. My second announcement is that I discussed with Derek Davis and Christine improvements that I would like to personally see in the budget process for 2021, and in particular for the residents tonight. one improvement that we discussed is how to provide the opportunity for public comment and input on township spending in general, and to answer specific questions people may have about individual line item expenses. And we discussed the idea of a 60 to 90-minute workshop format with a couple of sessions held in the August, early September timeframe. The intention would be to use the current year budget and the year-to-date spend as the basis for the workshop discussion, as it would be at that point premature to have an insight into the 2021 budget. And the goal really is to hear what residents or businesses believe needs consideration by the board during the budget setting process for 2021. So more to do, but the intention is to determine how best to have a forum where people can have a voice into the spend of the township and what they personally think the township should address at the board level. So those are two announcements I have, Robin.
Thank you. Ashley, did I hear you wanted to make a statement of your announcements?
Yes, I just have one announcement. So Derek Davis, assistant manager, and I have been working for a few months together to investigate, kind of, seek out a new web service, a new host for our township website. This started back in the beginning of the year in January. We met with a few different companies. We got some quotes from them. Derek was really great. He drew up a whole list of different companies we should look into, and we met with about 4 or 5 until the whole COVID thing happened, which has made it kind of difficult. But we in particular met with one company. It's called Civic Plus, and Civic Plus actually hosts the Westchester Borough's website. They host a bunch of towns around us, like West Norriton and Swarthmore. They actually host Ferguson and Malibu, Anaheim. Just tons. They're national. They have a lot of training programs, a lot of different things that they have to offer. And so we are at a point where I think both of us agreed that they were pretty impressive. And so I just wanted to make the board aware of that. I think Derek's going to be putting together a presentation for the board and for the public to kind of outline more of the cost and other things that they have to offer, and kind of show you what our website can look like. And I think especially now during this pandemic, it's more obvious than ever that communication between the township and the residents is really important. And I think that Civic Plus does a great job aiding with that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to make that announcement. We obviously have not made a decision or, made any kind of moves, but we both believe that this is a company that I think would really benefit the township. So hopefully within maybe by the next meeting, we'll have a presentation put together for everybody to kind of talk about that. And that's all I have tonight.
I had a comment. Robin, are you there?
Sorry, yes, I'm here. I muted myself, waiting for John or somebody else to jump in. No worries. I'm here.
Okay, can I go?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is Hugh. I'd like to commend the township staff for the work that they did at North Hill. The stream had eroded a great deal of the area behind the wing walls on the bridge over the creek there at North Hill, and that was not apparent when they first started. It actually caused some extra work to be done there, but it's a good thing that they found it and did it, and that overall, the whole job really looks good now. And hopefully we won't lose the bridge like we did before. I think they prevented that by filling in, although it did take some extra time to do it. It was necessary to protect the road, which is really the only good entrance into North Hill on the backside. And I'd like to commend the whole crew for doing a really excellent job. It looks good. The North Hill supervisory board was really pleased with the whole thing. So I'm done.
Yeah, I just wanted to announce, since the last time we met earlier this month, I've attended a number of webinars, including the Chester County Chamber of Commerce had a webinar, which included a number of the politicians in the area. So we got a lot of good information from the horse's mouth, from the county level as well as from the state level, about what is being pursued as far as dealing with this pandemic that we find ourselves in. That, of course, continues to unfold as we speak. Also attended a webinar offered by the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors, PSATs, part of their continuing education series. This particular topic was about how to manage unemployment compensation claims, and they provide a great deal of information about those townships who had found themselves a need to go in that direction. But anyway, a lot of good information that's out there. That's all I have to say.
Great, thank you. So my announcement is, I think, a reiteration of maybe some conversations I've had in prior announcements. But I have been working pretty closely to a handful of the residents in Roslyn area who brought to our attention their concerns about the public, the overlay in the northern part of Roslyn. Over the last few months, we've met a couple times, in one instance with the president, John Viella, who I think is one of the deputies to the president, and with Julie Dietrich, trying to find ways for us to create channels of communication so that the residents who have sort of coalesced over and created somewhat of what I would consider an advisory committee can have an open door, an open conversation with the university directors and people who can help address some of the concerns that they've had for years. We're moving forward now with the Roslyn committee, not just simply focusing on North Campus, but by evaluating and reaching out to residents of the entire area of Roslyn, even though they're on the southern side, that area also has their own concerns from historical behaviors and expectations and worries about future behaviors. So in the next week, we're planning on a meeting to facilitate the Roslyn Advisory Committee to have a little bit of an ability to promote themselves. And we're going to work through Dandelion to get an article into the, I think monthly it will be, because I think we've missed the May deadline, so that they can seek out other residents who want to join and be a part of this committee, so that they have a much more holistic view of most of the areas that are being affected by student activities, and then be able to bring them forward so that they can then have a seat at the table, so to speak, in many ways, to be able to provide their inputs and request what they think needs to be done. So it's been a very successful process. It came out of the board being made aware of the concerns that they had in the fall of last year. And they continue to move forward, and they want to ensure that they can include anyone in that community that wants to have a voice and share their concerns. And that's it for me. So we'll move on now to the township manager's announcements, please. Number 6. Sorry, number 5.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I have 3 brief announcements. the Board of Supervisors held an executive session this evening, May 19th, to discuss personnel. Secondly, Chester County Voter Services has consolidated several polling places in West Goshen Township. I don't have the list in front of me, but it's going to go out on the e-blast and we'll post it on the township website. I think they're consolidating, I think 3 or 4 locations, obviously because of the COVID-19 situation. And the township building will be open as our traditional polling spot. I just want to alert any voters who are coming to the building, you will have to wear a mask. And to let the board know, Chester County has offered, since we have not had any public in here since March 11th, the county is going to fund sanitizing of the facility on June 3rd, the day after the election. They've lined up a company to come in and clean our building after the election, since we'll have several hundred people here we haven't seen in several months. Lastly, I just want to continue to offer my thanks to the residents, the staff of West Goshen Township for the continued dedication. We went back to pretty much full-time work May 4th after our employees had been working from home for many weeks. We're now into, I think, week 10 of this crisis, and their dedication to the township has just been phenomenal. So I want to thank them for that. And that's it. Thank you.
I have one addition for you in regard to the polling places. The polling place that had been at the church on Cemetery Hill has been consolidated into the school with the North 2. That's basically it. It's the elementary school over next to Gagliardi's old building.
Yeah,
That's
Hugh,
Fern
are you talking about Trinity Church moving over to Fern Hill? I think that's what it was, right?
Correct. That's correct.
Okay.
That's
Yep.
it.
Thank you.
I guess I need to turn on my mic. I apologize. Item number 6, Township Engineers Stormwater Announcements and Woodlands at Greystone Update by Rick Craig. Take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Hugh mentioned, the stormwater emergency project at North Hills has been completed. The new spillway is constructed. The old spillway has been abandoned in place and filled, timing of which worked out very well because we were having another partial roadway collapse right before it was filled. So that is completed and the pond is beginning to fill back up again, and all of the disturbed areas have been stabilized. With regard to Greystone, housing construction is back in full swing now with governor's allowance for construction. As well, we have started even before the regular construction with the rehabilitation of the first and the largest of the 3 dams, Dam 181. That work is underway, and the first concrete pour for the footing on that will occur tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. That dam project is probably going to proceed for about another month and a half, at which point we'll move on to the 2nd and 3rd dams in sequence. And obviously the housing construction will continue as well. And that's all I have. Thank you.
I have a question for you, Rick. This is Sean. The other stormwater project that we had in progress over on Knollwood, what's the status of that right now?
The design is complete and the easements have been obtained, and I'm not sure where we stand on the construction at this point. Dave may have more information on that than I do at this point.
Yeah, we met, this is Dave. We met with Al Mark, myself, met with the contractor out there, and the structure has been ordered, but I think it was a 6 to 8 week lead time to get the product. I think we're looking sometime in June to probably start construction.
Is that early June or is that late June, Dave?
With everything going on, we don't have a firm date yet. It's going to be sometime in June, but we're not sure.
Okay, thanks.
I'm going to say middle to the end, but maybe earlier.
Okay.
Rick, if I can ask you, what's the status of the Raven Lane stormwater issue there? Is there any remedial work that still needs to be done on that at this time? Or where do we stand with that?
Well, there's a great deal of remedial work that needs to be done, but there's a great deal of preparation that needs to be done before that. We're in the survey phase of that now, and probably not yet into the design phase. We have temporarily stabilized the few sinkholes that we had south of Ravens Lane, but those are basically Band-Aid fixes, which do not have a long duration. Possibly Al could give us an update on where we are with the survey and the design.
Al, unmute yourself.
You're talking about Ravens Lane.
Yes.
Yes.
The survey's been completed. The points are, the base plan is basically being generated. It's been a little bit of a difficulty with everybody working from home, getting some of that done. But I anticipate hopefully in the next week to 10 days to have that base plan for the entire stormwater system completed.
Okay, thank you. Also, I just want to thank you, Rick, and also Casey for responding quickly. I had an issue, well, not an issue, but this Nextdoor web blog site that I'm on, it's a neighborhood site, and folks get on it and they start an email thread. And one of the issues that popped up on this blog site was about a problem with the light there at Glen Avenue and Route 3. Apparently, the light there is not working properly. One of the persons on the email thread said they waited for as much as 20 minutes. I find that hard to believe, 20 minutes for this light to change in the evening. But anyway, thanks for that response, Rick. And you said you would send out the crew to check it out. So the residents there certainly appreciate that. But anyway, thank you for your quick response.
Certainly.
All right, any other comments from board members? Okay, hearing none, let's move on to item number 7, the zoning officer's announcements. Mr. Bill Webb.
Good evening, everyone. We are still taking in zoning applications. I'm about to receive one for Christ Community Church, but as we're aware, we're not going to be holding any hearings until at least June or July, maybe further, depending on when we get reopened, because we have to allow the public be in here. And you never know with these situations how many people are going to want to come to a hearing. So any zoning hearings that are going to take place will probably be June, July, maybe even August. The MPC has been waived, so we're okay from that stance. With regards to all the land development projects, all of our developers have been very understanding with us. And even before the governor had waived the timelines for the MPC, I was able to get letters from all the developers with the exception of 2 to just waive the time periods for approval. The other 2 developers, one gave us until July 1st, and but both the 2 that were outstanding gave us till July 1st. But those 2 plans will be on your agenda next month for approval after they get through the planning commission. We are receiving a lot of grass complaints. Our procedure for that is we send a notice of violation. If within 5 days, we only give 5 days for grass. If within 5 days the people don't respond, I will stop out the property and try and make contact. After that, we do issue a citation, and then I do refer them to the contractor that does our work for us. So he's already cut a few properties that are vacant properties that have been continual issues for the past few years. Our rental inspection program, we're ahead of schedule compared to last year's numbers. We're still, even though people are supposed to be emergency housing only, we're still very busy with the rentals. I have nothing further. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question, Bill. These vacated properties in the township that require grass cutting, how many are we talking here? I mean, we're talking about 10, 20, 30? I mean, is it a real issue? How many do you have to have get cut?
It's a very small, it's a very small number, John. I think right now he has about 3. And then our process is he sends us the bill. We pay the bill. I send a letter to the address. We know the property is vacant. Once we give 30 days for that invoice to be paid, and then we send it over to Kristen. She files a lien against the real estate. We've been very successful with getting our money back. So every time that these properties are sold, the township does receive their money back. Plus, we add a 10% charge onto that.
Right. Also, I just want to say, I did ask you to take a look at a property there on Meeting House Road, and you did take a look at that and took care of that. And the neighborhood residents there appreciate your quick response to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bill and John. We're going to move on to item number 8, a discussion of the 2020 Township Park and Recreation Department Summer Camp Program and other recreation activities. Go ahead, Ken.
Yep, this is Ken Lear. Last week, I forwarded to the Board of Supervisors, the Park and Recreation Board, and the Friends of West Goshen Parks a couple of links to documents. One of them is the Governor's Report on Reopening Pennsylvania, and one was a report by the Pennsylvania Recreation and Park Society, which took the Governor's report and basically broke it down to how it would apply to park facilities and programs. Using those guidelines, I cannot see any way feasible to proceed with the summer recreation program. And also, any events over 100 people would need to be canceled. This would include our July 4th decorated bicycle parade and our summer concert series. In addition, I am looking, the Park and Recreation Department is looking at canceling our June bus trip to New York City, our July trip to Hamilton. Broadway closed through September 6th, so that one would be closed regardless, and canceling our August trip to Annapolis. Since that email was sent out, the CDC has come out with their guidelines, and they indicate that basically summer camps should not operate if you cannot guarantee social distancing among participants, and if you cannot guarantee equipment will not be shared. And I will be honest, we have a good crew of counselors, but regardless of how good they may be, keeping 5 to 12-year-olds socially distant is something I would not feel comfortable in being able to guarantee.
So Ken?
Yes.
Hi. So has the Parks and Rec group already made a decision on not moving forward?
Well, usually I would run it by the Park and Recreation Board before running it by the Board of Supervisors, just due to the timing of the meetings. They meet tomorrow. I did forward the email that I sent to the Board of Supervisors recommending cancellation to the Park and Recreation Board and the Friends of West Goshen Parks. I have basically the feedback I have gotten, which is not a formal recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, but has been, yes, we are sorry to see the cancellation, but we understand.
Okay, so we will go ahead and we need to make a decision as a board to accept this, the fact that we're not going to be offering these services. Is that how we have to handle this? Casey?
Yeah,
Kristen?
I would recommend the board make a formal decision on, just as a group, kind of just a decision on all the programs that we're going to have to cancel. They're already budgeted, but I'd like the board to make a formal motion, second, and vote to cancel these.
So the
I'll
motion,
make the motion to,
I'll
I'll
second.
make the motion to cancel the program per Ken's recommendations.
And I'll second the motion.
okay, should we open up for public comment? Is there anyone, any callers on that are interested in making public comment related to this matter?
Madam Chair, it's Lisa. I don't see anyone.
You don't see anyone?
I will note that Tom Steins is on the, I see his name here. So Tom, I don't know if there's anything that you would wish to add as summer coordinator.
You have to unmute your mic, Tom, if you're on.
Good evening, everyone. I unfortunately am in agreement with the Park and Recreation Board that unfortunately I don't believe we'd be able to host a safe program for not only the children who'd be coming up, but also for our staff that'd be running these programs.
All right, thank you, Tom, for your comments. Thank you, Ken, for your information. Is there anyone on the line, on one of our as an attendee or as a caller who would like to make public comment now?
Madam Chair, I see Margie Schwartz.
Okay. Go
I
ahead,
just
Margie.
have, hi, good evening, everyone. I just have a couple generic questions regarding the program. Is this program open only to West Goshen residents, or is it to any resident throughout the area?
This is Ken Lear. I'll take that. Historically, the West Goshen summer program is available to non-residents. They do pay a higher fee than the West Goshen residents do. If we were to able to offer anything later in summer or anything, it would have to be restricted to just residents. But historically, we have had it open to non-residents for a higher fee.
Okay, and then thank you very much. And then also historically, do you give preference first come, first serve to West Goshen residents, or you just open it up to whoever comes first, but if you're not a resident, you pay a little higher fee?
No, we have a 2-week registration period where West Goshen residents get priority. And then after those 2 weeks, if there are openings, then based on registration date, non-residents may apply.
Okay, thank you very much. And then one last question, just generic for in the future. Is this a revenue generation positive program for the township, or how does that work out budget-wise?
It is not a positive income program. The program is subsidized for West Goshen residents. The non-residents pay a higher fee that would cover the cost of their child attending.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Doug, my public comment, please. Yes, Ken, would it be possible if the situation changes with this virus, if we could have an abbreviated program later on in the summer, or is it not possible due to the planning?
That may be possible. We do have a number of past staff that indicated that they may be able to return this summer. If that were the case, we would restrict it just to staff that is returning. They would already have their child clearances in place, and they would already be familiar with the program, so the orientation would be much easier. It would have to be restricted by location. That is to say, we would not have all 3 locations operating. And it would have to be restricted in terms of the number of people participating. and thus it would be restricted to West Goshen residents only. I will be honest, I don't see that being a likelihood, but we did get some feedback from residents who did say that if at all possible, they would like, even if it's an abbreviate program, the possibility of something like that happening. I do leave that at the discretion of the Board of Supervisors, but if the state were to designate Chester County code yellow or code green, and we were able to make that happen, it may be a possibility. As I said, I don't see it as a likelihood, though.
Okay, thank you, Ken.
And Ken, if that's the case, if an abbreviated program could be done at the end of the summer, if we go into yellow status, when would you need a decision for that to happen?
That's a good question. Realistically, we would probably need a decision for that to happen the end of June or first week of July.
Okay. Are you still accepting applications for summer camp counselors?
At this point, assuming that we do not run the full camp, we will not accept further applications. Anything that we do would probably just have returning counselors.
Yeah, I noticed when I was driving by the township building, and I'm assuming that you waited until now when we had a public discussion about it, that the posting for those counselors is still up. So I assume you're going to probably change that as of tomorrow.
First thing in the morning.
We wanted to wait until it was official, yes.
Well, if you did just pursue this abbreviated program a little bit further, if the decision was to do it by the end of June or early July, would you have staff available to be able to staff that abbreviated program?
We would have enough staff from returning counselors, assuming they're still available. Now, that may be a faulty assumption, but based on counselors who indicated that they would be able to return, we would have enough staff to do it at one location.
Okay, so that would be part of the calculation if we did have to make that decision at the end of June or early July. All right, thanks, Ken.
Okay, do we have any other public comment?
I'm not sure if caller 6 has a question.
Okay, caller 6, can you please identify yourself?
Okay, that's it then.
Okay.
Robin, I have one more question for Ken, actually. Ken, this is Sean Walsh. The board received an email yesterday from a David Harvey, who's the Little League district administrator. And he indicated in his email that he is hoping or expecting, I'm not quite sure which one, that they would be able to access our field sometime in June. Are you aware of that situation, and what are your thoughts on it?
I do not directly oversee the field coordination. That is handled by Doreen McClune, but my understanding is that team uses, as long as we're in code red, that would be out of the question. Casey, perhaps you would know better about code yellow, how that may apply to them.
I would be extremely cautious, even through phase yellow. A Little League game, I mean, I played Little League, you can have 50 parents there and 40 kids playing. I don't think even through yellow we would get to that point. And I would also caution our insurance carrier may not appreciate that we're offering field space to leagues during the pandemic for obvious liability reasons. So we will have to watch it very closely.
Are there any other board members who have any other comments? Okay, I'd like to make a comment that I would like to see this program canceled for the entire time period of the summer. Primarily because we are hearing more and more information from the CDC about this virus coming back in the beginning of the fall. I don't want our township to be in a situation where we make a very late decision, irrespective of whether it's yellow or it's green, knowing that the CDC is predicting that it's going to be possibly worse than. Plus, we're hearing more and more stories about young children in particular. They still don't understand what syndrome is. And I just don't think it's the right thing for us to be doing this year.
Madam Chair, we have one more question from Ryan Hemingway.
Yes, do have a question following up to that. So if we have a full 6 weeks before we have to make this decision regarding summer camps and activities about getting our youth and our kids back to a sense of normalcy before school possibly could start back in the fall, why would we not take that time that's at our availability and use it to rush a decision based on what may or may not happen? You know, we know so much more in 4 to 5 weeks than we do today. Second question regarding Little League. West Side does use the East Bradford fields. If East Bradford was to go ahead and allow them, you know, is that a decision that's made with West Goshen and East Bradford together towards the unanimous decision?
Your comment, just so I'm clear, is related to use of the baseball fields?
Well, two parts. One is for the summer camps. Why would we make a decision to cancel it today when we've got 6 weeks in our back pocket to make this decision, when we may get further guidance from the CDC that may improve the situation, or perhaps it makes it worse and it can't happen? The second question was regarding West Little League. Is that decision about using the fields coordinated with East Bradford as well, since they do use the East Bradford fields as well? You know, if we ran into a situation where East Bradford said, go ahead, let's play on our fields, and you know, West Goshen said no, or vice versa, is that mutually discussed between the townships?
Ken, can you put your mic on? Unless you want Tom to speak for it. Excuse me.
Well, once again, when it comes to field use, that is not in my direct purview, but I guess I'm a little confused by the question. We don't usually coordinate with East Bradford Township as far as I'm aware.
Okay, thank you for your comment, Mr. Hemingway. All right, we have a motion and we have a second.
So Robin, I have a question before we vote on this motion. So in light of Mr. Hemingway's suggestion, is the motion that's out there now to cancel it completely, or is it just to not proceed until further information is available, maybe at the end of June, and revisit this question again at the June meeting?
Well, if I could follow up with that.
My motion.
Excuse me?
Go ahead, Hugh.
My motion was to follow the comments that Ken made, which allowed an open-ended situation towards the end of the summer period, as I understand it.
It was not to cancel outright.
Yeah,
correct.
All right, well then I withdraw my second.
Well, what Ken recommends here, according to his emails, the Park and Recreation Department recommends the cancellation of the summer recreation program for 2020. If Chester County moves into yellow status by July 2020, we may be able to offer an abbreviated 1 to 4 week program to a limited number of West Goshen residents utilizing available returning staff. A decision would need to be made on such a modified offering by the end of June 2020.
I make a motion to cancel outright for the summer.
And I will second that.
We can't make the.
Yeah, we have to vote on the first motion.
Okay, then we
Correct.
should vote on the first motion. Okay, so we have to do this by voice vote. I'm going to start with Sean.
Okay, so I need clarity because, again, if we're voting on what is written in Ken's email, which allows for us to review a change of the Chester County status to yellow as to whether we can offer an abbreviated program, if that is what the motion is, then I vote in favor of the motion.
Hold on a second. Ashley withdrew her second for that initial motion. So someone would have to second the motion again. Sean, did you want to do that?
Yes, I will second. I'm going to second the motion, which I am reading now as we are canceling the summer recreation program for 2020 at this point, unless Chester County moves to a yellow status by July 2020, at which point we could consider an abbreviated 1 to 4 week program.
Okay, so
Correct.
we need to take a toll now. So Sean, you're supporting still allowing a possible another decision in July to open up for the end of through the end of the summer?
That is correct.
Okay. John Hellman, what is your vote?
My vote is to comply with that. That's Ken's recommendation, and I agree with that.
And Hugh?
I made the motion, and that is correct.
Okay, I'm going to vote against the motion.
And I also vote against it.
Okay, so just to recap for a second, I have Hugh, second by Sean. John, Sean, and Hugh voted in favor, and Ashley and Robin voted against, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Ms. Schwartz had a comment or question, but I didn't want to interrupt your vote.
I just wanted to follow up on Mr. Hemingway's comment that there is still an outstanding issue, according to Mr. Lair, regarding the baseball program. And I think just because we may not have reached out to East Bradford in the past, that under these circumstances, why wouldn't we? And just to touch base with them and see what their plans are regarding the fields. And as Mr. Lair said, that doesn't really fall under his purview. So I would just like to hear more discussion on that.
If I could jump in on that, Madam Chairperson, this is Kristen Camp, solicitor. When Mr. Lalonde was saying that he doesn't believe that the use of the fields would comply with the governor's order, I agree with that. Even if we move to a yellow stage, the restrictions are that there should be no more than 25 people. So I don't know how you would have the use of our fields on Little League. The teams themselves and their coaches would exceed 25 people. So I think West Goshen, although it may be informational, for informational purposes to see what East Bradford's doing, West Goshen controls its own parks and can make its own decision with respect to the use of its fields.
Sure. As a courtesy, would it be appropriate just to send a memo or an email to East Bradford and let them know of the discussion tonight and how West Goshen Township is moving forward?
Well, I don't think the township has any discretion in the matter. While we're still as a red county, and even if we move into a yellow county, I don't think there's really a discussion to be had. They would be violating the governor's orders.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next item, which is discussion of small wireless facilities.
My colleague Kim Benzie worked on this, and she's going to jump in and explain this to the board.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kim, when you're ready.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great, thanks. What supervisors have before them are two documents. The first thing you have is something called the Small Wireless Facilities Ordinance. And then you also have something called the Small Wireless Facility Design Guidelines. And what the Small Wireless Facilities Ordinance does is essentially it's a separate ordinance intended to regulate these facilities that are called small wireless facilities, and they're actually just defined by the FCC. So these are the facilities, these are the 5G facilities that are being deployed. I know that shortly soon you'll start seeing some applications come in through your township. So the idea is that we don't have a lot of control of where they can be located within the township, but we have some control. We also have a lot of control over the design of what they look like in your township. So essentially what the ordinance does is it provides for some guidelines as far as the process to process these facilities as they apply to be built in your township. And then the additional document, which is the design guidelines, those are adopted by resolution. And those are by resolution so that if the design guidelines in a year don't appeal to you anymore, we can easily change those. So I sent a fairly lengthy memo dated January 29th, which hopefully you all have, that kind of explains some of the history behind the need for these ordinances and design regulations. And one of the reasons we're kind of pressing forward with these is because if you have something in place before these applications come in, you have a bit more control as to what they look like, and you do have some ability to regulate where they go as far as, if they want to be put right in front of a house, you can request that they be set a little further down the road so it's not in front of someone's door. And these facilities, just so everyone knows, these facilities are smaller facilities. They're not the large towers. They're the ones that are under 50 feet. And the small wireless are a kind of facility that's it's actually defined by the FCC. So we've pulled it out of zoning and are regulating it in a different manner. So I guess this is kind of a lot to process, and I hopefully if anybody has any questions, I think tonight what we're hoping for. I know that I was before your planning commission, and they were in support of the ordinance and also in support of the design guidelines. But of course, I'm happy to if there's any input from the supervisors as to different designs or something in the ordinance you have questions about, I'm happy to take comments and work through it. But again, it's kind of pressing as far as I'd love for West Goshen to get something in place, but before the facilities come through, so you have a little more control over the process.
One of the things I want to jump into.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Kim. I just want to reiterate something in terms of, the regulations in terms of wireless communication facilities have really changed. We used to be regulating the large towers on private property or even on township land, like the one we have at the township building. And now with the industry changing to be the small wireless facilities, as that term is defined in the regulations, FCC regulations, it's really more akin to regulating utilities that are going to be within your rights of way. And so similar to how you have cable franchise regulations as a standalone ordinance, we're seeing the trend that these are being pulled out of zoning and they're being governed and regulated by a standalone ordinance. We think it's important to do that because zoning has its own rules and regulations that are governed by the municipality's planning code that makes it a little bit more cumbersome in terms of enacting ordinances. There's review processes that have to occur when it's a zoning ordinance. If it's a standalone ordinance, there's less restrictions in terms of the ability to amend these ordinances. There's more, I think there's more regulations in place that dictate what the township can and can't do with respect to these types of facilities in your rights of way. And so again, this is really, Kim has been working on these for all of our municipal clients. She's done a lot of legwork to see how, municipalities and cities and across the entire United States are regulating these facilities that are coming through. She has had several meetings with Verizon and I believe AT&T, who have already expressed interest in coming into West Goshen. And I've sat in a couple of those meetings, they're interested in coming in the more dense environments, like West Goshen Township on the main thoroughfares. So that there is not so much an urgency that absolutely positively has to be done tonight, but there is, as she mentioned, we'd like to get this, up and running so that we have regulations in place and we have design guidelines. The design guidelines being adopted as a resolution is also a means for you to be able to change that rather quickly. It doesn't need to be advertised. And that's where you really can tweak it based on what you'd like to see as far as the aesthetics of these types of facilities. Kim can speak for herself because she's had more meetings than I with these facility providers, but they typically will say, hey, we can make these look however you want. Cost doesn't seem to be an issue with them. And so if there's a certain way or look that you'd like them to be when they're in West Goshen, they're typically willing to comply with that. But we really need, your input on that in terms of specific design guidelines if they're different than what is attached to the resolution.
So are you recommending us to decide about making a motion now to move forward with this? You said it's not an immediate need per se, but we should probably get started.
It is.
It is an immediate need, you think?
Yeah, we've already received an application this week, I think, from AT&T.
Okay.
The ordinance,
Yeah,
the ordinance,
I-
the ordinance would have to be advertised for a public hearing, but the design guidelines can be adopted by resolution tonight if you see fit.
Can you tell me how many units we're talking about? Like how many wireless, whatever they're called, are going to be installed?
Sure. So I don't know that we know that exactly yet. I mean, typically what happens is AT&T might come in. I think currently, because I'm dealing with AT&T in the borough of Westchester, I think AT&T currently is, I think they have 2 or 3 sites identified in West Goshen Township. But, that's just initially. I don't know if it's going to be more. It depends on their requirements and what they need to increase the capacity of their network. So I think this evening, I think the resolution is what is probably the most pressing, the resolution that has the design guidelines attached to it. Just because if this application comes in the next couple of days, we really don't have any design guidelines in place. And some of the guidelines are just simply to minimize the impact, the visual impact these facilities have. Now, I will note that if you look at the design guidelines, there is a section that talks about if the applicant and the township want to agree on a different design, then they can. So you're not necessarily held to these design guidelines, but they do set some standards. Something as simple as design guidelines, they require the equipment to be enclosed and no wires hanging outside it. Those are the kind of design guidelines I do want you all to consider getting in place sooner rather than later.
Kim, what was the basis for these design guidelines? How did you pull this document together with the illustrations?
So I really, well, I talked to a couple different municipal managers. I actually talked to a couple townships and counties across the United States. So I went online and I said, all right, who's got design guidelines already out there and what makes sense? And so I started pulling from that. So it's really, design guidelines are something that I've created, but I've gotten a lot of input from zoning officers and, township staff from all over Chester County to kind of pull together design regulations that make sense.
Okay, thank you.
On February the 11th, the Planning Commission had the opportunity to review the ordinance. We didn't have the resolution to discuss before us, but we did look at the ordinance. And just to let everyone know, there were a couple of concerns. First of all, it was unanimously recommended to the board to accept this ordinance, but with a couple of caveats. The first being that the small wireless facility installations comply with the NFPA 70, the National Electrical Code, particularly for granting provisions. There was concern raised about we wanted to be ensure that any of these installations would not present an electrocution hazard to any of the residents in the township. So that's number one. And then the second thing was there was a fair amount of discussion going on about a concern about these smaller wireless facilities being installed in communities where the utilities are underground. If it's located in a pole somewhere, it didn't seem to be that much of a concern. It seemed like the designs that were being offered would not be problematic. But if you're talking about putting new poles in a neighborhood where there are none, because everything's underground, the Planning Commission felt there should be more options available in the way of designs, particularly in the section at the end of the resolution area where you talk about acceptable poles. We felt that there could be more of a choice made available in the text. So that's something I think that we should consider as the board, those two considerations of the Planning Commission about this.
So John or Casey, what staff would have responsibility for helping us to expand our resolution to include perhaps more aesthetic designs for new poles in residential areas? Who would have that responsibility?
It would just be a mix of all of us here, Rick, Bill, myself, Derek. But to John's point, the electrical code has got to be followed, so that's really not a consideration. They have to meet the National Electrical Code. And the FCC obviously rules the day here. We only have so much wiggle room here, and Kim can speak to that as well on requiring, we can't require below ground facilities, obviously, and that kind of thing. So Kim, if you'd like to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think we're certainly open to, if there's other design ideas for facilities that are above ground in residential neighborhoods, they can certainly be added. I mean, I'm obviously open to adding those depictions. I guess my only concern would be that, we could adopt this resolution for design guidelines and then add additional, design ideas as we move along. That's not a problem at all. Or we can wait and quickly try to look and identify some decorative lights that would make sense in residential districts where everything is underground. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's my only comment on that. And as far as electrical code, I thought I'd gone back into that. Those provisions would have been in the ordinance section, which I think we're, obviously not ready to move on tonight. So I can double check to make sure there's some kind of language in there, but I'm fairly sure there is. Certainly, they need to comply with electrical code.
Well, if this is the same ordinance that you presented on February the 11th, I don't believe it did, but yeah, please correct me on that. It's just important that that be cited in the ordinance and in the resolution, that they comply with the granting provisions, particularly that's required by the code.
So Kim, this is Robin. I'm just questioning, the height of the pole that is being used in these locations, do they have also an impact? We talked about adding a pole, what John was saying earlier, in a neighborhood where you don't have a pole. What are the types of, can you just give a general understanding of how those things might be mounted, maybe lower or in a different area? Like, how do they make those decisions if we find it to be unacceptable for them to have placed something in a place where we don't think it should be placed?
Well, typically what happens is they've done a very careful analysis of where their poles need to be in order to have the connection they need. So, I think if you look on, it's section D, if essentially what happens, I have language in your design regulations that say that if they propose a pole to be in a certain spot, that the municipality reserves the right to propose an alternate location within 100 feet of the proposed location. So that gives us the ability to have them shifted, within 100 feet to possibly a more agreeable location to the township.
And the other thing that I'm sorry, Kim. No, I just want to jump in. And the other thing that I'm seeing here is that there are a lot of options as far as placement. For example, you listed an existing traffic light as one option, and an existing street light. But did you also say that maybe we could add some additional decorative street lights, things like that? I mean, is the point that we should agree to this to move forward so that we have these options if it's in a neighborhood that doesn't already have utility poles, that we can either mount it on an existing traffic light that's close to the neighborhood, or we can maybe put it in like a decorative street light, things like that. Like, is that kind of what we're talking about?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
So I think it's really important that we get in front of this as well, so that we have whatever control that we can have, that at least we can jump in and talk about where we want these things to be placed, and to have them have as minimal an impact as possible, especially in the neighborhoods, like you said, John, that don't already have these poles.
So Kim, the first step is to get this resolution. You're saying to adopt it, right? So that would then allow us to get started on having this information available, so that if a company comes in requesting we've already drafted the resolution.
That's correct. That would be the first step, to get the resolution passed so the design guidelines are in place. And then when the applicants come in, they've got to work with these design guidelines.
Okay, and so when do we have the flexibility or timeline of that to be able to make those recommendations? Is it when they approach us for what they would like to do and then we go back to them on that? Or do we start looking at those things now as this would be what we'd like to see in most cases?
I think what will happen is they'll submit a permit application and they'll be provided with design guidelines. So they'll take them back and they'll try to figure out whether or not they can work within our design guidelines. I mean, I know they already can, because these design guidelines aren't, I've used them in other townships and they're workable for a lot of these facilities. So they'll look at the design guidelines and they'll come back to us with some ideas of what they think makes sense in West Goshen Township and also complies with the design guidelines.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments from the board?
I'd like to make the motion that we adopt the resolution.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that. But again, I'd like to see an inclusion in this resolution, compliance with NFPA 70, the National Electrical Code.
John, the resolution wouldn't have that kind of a standard. That would really be better suited in the ordinance. I think Kim did add that on page 12 of the ordinance. 67-13.b indicates that they have to comply with any applicable provisions of the National Electric Code. She can add to that if there's any other specific code you're referring to, but that's in the ordinance. I think the design guidelines are more aesthetically and physical location, where compliance with certain permit requirements and other codes would, I think, be better suited in the ordinance.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a second and a motion and a second. So let's open up for public comment.
Madam Chair, Margie Schwartz has a question.
Yes, Margie, go ahead. Margie, we can't hear you because you're still muted.
Pardon me?
You're still muted. Okay, now we can hear you.
Mr. Lalonde had mentioned that the township already received an application this week from AT&T. Ms. Bensi mentioned that they have identified maybe up to 3 locations already. So I think it would just be helpful before we vote, if we already have that information, that those locations be shared with the board. And also what information is included in that application that might help in possibly making some amendments, or we have an opportunity to see what the application looks like or the locations. Why wouldn't we be discussing that information now?
I can field that question. So as far as I'm aware, I do not believe an application has been formally submitted to the township on this. And when I referenced being aware of other facilities that are planned for West Goshen Townships, that's just because AT&T had showed me a map that showed other areas that they were going to hope to put facilities in. So I don't think that, and actually, to be honest with you, I don't really know that knowing those locations is really all that relevant. I mean, these design guidelines are for all types of, not just AT&T's applications. It's to address whatever ones come in. So I don't even know it'd be relevant really with respect to this resolution to know exactly where the AT&T sites are planned. And we don't officially have that information anyways. So, but thank you.
Okay, certainly, thank you. And one follow-up. Then when Verizon or whatever company comes in after AT&T, do those companies also, what do you call it, not reallocate, they also co-locate on the same facility, or do the companies have to be separate facilities?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So there's one of the providers called Crown Castle. They actually have the ability to have some co-location on their poles, but AT&T, typically it's just their pole. But I will say there's all types of new technology coming out, And your current ordinances and this new ordinance, which we haven't quite gotten to yet, they really strongly encourage co-location, either on an existing facility or an existing structure. It makes it much more simple for a provider to come in and co-locate rather than put up a new pole. So I think a lot of times we're going to find the applications are going to come in. I mean, it's a guess, but I think a lot of them are going to actually seek to co-locate more so than putting up new poles. That's been the trend currently.
Great, thank you.
Doug White,
I was
public
going to
comment.
add to that too, just the point that if a company has, for example, a traffic light or a light standard that they can that meets their needs as far as location, they're just as happy to co-locate on those existing facilities. And if those facilities are owned by the township, then it's a benefit to the township because these ordinances contemplate that the township would be paid for every facility that's installed on a township-owned facility. So it is encouraged, and the facility providers do like to do that.
Thank you. Do we have another comment? I think I heard.
You have 3 more. Dr. White?
Yes, this is Doug. As far as the resolution for the aesthetic concerns, I would support the resolution. As far as the ordinance goes, yes, the Planning Commission did support this. But Kim, I wasn't sure if in the ordinance, it could be, correct me if I'm wrong, if there's a discussion on RF exposure safety in terms of the density of these units and the power level that they emit at. Just a comment. Thank you.
Brian, do you have a comment?
I do. Most of it I grabbed between Ms. Ford and Ms. Camp, but one with AT&T being driving these, and then I've done significant work with Crown Castle in the past and my other employers. One, these are a great revenue stream because we should be encouraging these to go into township-owned places and charging rent for these. Crown Castle also, if they're one of the leaders in when they co-locate, every time another proprietor jumps on, Verizon jumps on, there should be a fee paid for additional carriers paid for rent. And then the second part then is with AT&T driving this, it is their goal to build the facility and then collect rent from Verizon, T-Mobile, et cetera, and would the township receive any part of that?
And then you have caller 6. Okay, no caller 6. That's it.
Okay, I don't know whether Kim heard Mr. Hemingway's discussion. She's on mute right now. Can she be unmuted?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, did you hear Mr. Hemingway's comments recently, just most recently?
Well, I was digging through the ordinance to make sure that there wasn't any issues with that radio frequency radiation. And so someone asked about that. So just to on page 3 of the ordinance again, which we're not really considering tonight, but the definition of small wireless facility actually says that the facility shall not result in human exposure to radio frequency radiation in excess of the applicable safety standards specified in 47 CFR section 1, yada, yada, yada. So that is addressed in the ordinance, just to field that one question. And then I caught a little bit about, was it the Crown, someone was saying they had worked with Crown Castle in the past.
Yes, Mr. Hemingway had made that comment. There he is. He's back on now. Go ahead.
I can give you a quick 30-second version. So, again, not having dealt in the public sector, but have dealt with quite a bit in the private sector. I've got lots of space, like to rent to cell carriers, Crown Castle in particular. If they're jumping onto something that is township property, seems to me they should be paying rent for that. And if they lock in with AT&T is option A for their carrier, and then Verizon, T-Mobile join on as a second partner and a third partner, the rent rate should reflect adding a second carrier and a third carrier, fourth carrier on a dynamic kind of rent scale. Part 2 of that was AT&T also likes to do this game too, where they come in they build the infrastructure. They're the first ones in the door. And then Verizon piggybacks and T-Mobile really likes to piggyback onto both their network. And then they're paying AT&T the rent, and AT&T is turning this into a profit. So we just make sure the township's covered, and that you know, if we are able to get any revenue out of this, that we cover all of our bases to make sure A to Z that, you know, people aren't making money off of our back.
Right, but
Yes.
legally, what are our options there?
So your point is well taken. We already have I think it's an ongoing relationship with Crown Castle, and we have an agreement in place with them. And I think that agreement does contemplate if additional providers go on their poll that we get an increased revenue. But that was all entered into before the current FCC rulings. So the current FCC rulings, they dictate how much I guess fees, right-of-way fees or rental fees, whatever you want to call them. They actually set numbers about how, you know, as far as, you know, we can't ask for over a certain amount. And so that's actually in the ordinance, those numbers. But, you know, I don't know that we've looked at whether or not, you know, if AT&T adds a facility, can we increase it? I don't think the FCC contemplated that in their limitations they put. So, so the right-of-way access fee, we have it set now at $200 per small wireless facility per year, with an additional 70 if they co-locate on a township-owned pole. And 270 is that's as much as we can charge or receive from the provider. So I understand what you're saying, and we can do, you know, we can be creative to a certain point as long as we stay within the parameters set by the FCC. So
Janice,
that's
I'm going to
something.
jump in for a second. I think we just need, can I jump in? I think we need to look to see whether that fee, I mean, I would read it to say that every provider is contemplating its own small wireless facility, so that we would be able to collect that fee for everybody, that even if it's one pole, if there are multiple small wireless facilities being installed on one pole, we could collect that fee per provider. I think we need to just clarify that, if that's the law, and if so, then make that clear in the ordinance itself. I think that's a very good point.
That's what the ordinance says. It is clear in the ordinance. I just don't know if there's a different way that providers are piggybacking on each other where we wouldn't know that there are a new smaller wireless facilities coming in. That's what
Right,
I'm.
that was my question. How would we know
They would need
that?
a building permit from the township to do that.
Mhm. Right. So, yeah, I mean, the ordinance is very clear on,
I think,
you know,
maybe Rick can jump in. I think that as anybody comes in to install an additional facility on an existing pole or street lamp or obviously traffic signal, they would be submitting a building permit application. And that would trigger Rick or the code department to, you know, recall that this ordinance is in place to make sure that they're paying the appropriate fee.
That's correct. You'd actually have to apply for road occupancy permit first to build within the township right of way. And then that would require a building permit, which would then require compliance with all applicable codes, including electrical code.
okay, good. So we'll be able to catch it in that way.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, I believe. Do we have any other additional public comment? Hearing none, we'll have a voice count. I'll start with John Hellman.
Aye.
Ashley,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Hugh,
Aye.
Robin, aye. Thank you, Kim, for your presentation this evening.
Robin, do you also want to authorize advertisement for the ordinance for your June meeting?
Yeah, that was my question about pursuing the ordinance.
That was the next thing.
Yep, separate motion.
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we proceed with advertising the ordinance.
And I'll second that.
Okay. Do we have any public comment on this matter? All right, hearing none, we're going to go ahead with the voice count. I'm going to start. Robin, aye. Hugh,
Hugh is aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Ashley,
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Okay, ayes have it. Thank you, everyone. All right, we're going to now move on to item number 10, discussion and possible approval of proclamation on tuberous sclerosis complex awareness day. This was initially scheduled for our Wednesday meeting at the beginning of the month, but the person who requested this and who is supporting this proclamation, we wanted him and his family to have an opportunity to speak to the residents directly. So it looks like we have them on. This is Jack Lyons and his wife, whose name I don't know because it's not on the it's not on the computer.
Fran.
So tell me yours.
Fran Lyons.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So how are we going to move forward with this? Would you like to have a moment to share some information with the board and any residents that are listening this evening?
Sure, that'd be great. We appreciate that opportunity, so thank you for that. Our son is 10 years old and was initially diagnosed with tuberous sclerosis at 6 months old. Briefly, we had never heard of that. In fact, we had gone on to some websites, and it tells a story of devastation and terrible lives. However, fortunately, the program, or one of the organizations that we latched on with quickly, is the Tuberous Sclerosis Alliance, and we are co-walk chairs. And we hosted our first walk here in Westchester area just last year. This walk was one of 30. Previously, the one in Pennsylvania was held in Reading, Pennsylvania. But once Fran and I got involved, which was in 2016, and became more aware of the entire organization, some of the work that we do on Capitol Hill, going down, getting the progressionally directed medical research program. We had to go speak with congressmen and women down in Washington. We got more involved and we wanted to do more, so we took on the walk just recently. And it's also why I reached out to you guys, to this group. One of the things that disturbed us is that when he was diagnosed, we had never heard of it. And I assume most, if not all of you, had never heard of it neither. So what disturbed me most was, or both of us, was that it was more common than Lou Gehrig's disease. I'm sure we've all heard of that. Or cystic fibrosis. Now, how can that be? So this is why we advocate for awareness. And that awareness and what we've been able to learn has put our Zachary on a terrific path. He has defied a lot of odds, I should say, but is doing better than most. And part of that is because of the awareness. Some of the doctors that we've been put in touch with have put him on anti-seizure medications. And none of this would have been possible without organizations and parents like us getting involved. And I just want to say, I don't know if Jack gave information to you guys, but it is a genetic disorder, and it causes tumors to grow in vital organs throughout the body. Also, mostly it's the brain, the heart, the lungs, the kidneys, the skin. And so the outcomes can vary a lot because, depending on how it's affecting, each individual's body. So, but majority of people that have it are at risk for seizures, have some form of epilepsy. And you can either be, some people are severely autistic, and some people, you barely would know they had an issue, So, so it's very variable on how it affects people. Our son had a status seizure, which is a seizure that lasts, longer than 5 minutes. He had a seizure lasting about 4 hours. He stopped breathing. We had to medevac him to CHOP. He had to be put on a ventilator for a few hours.
And, so thank God, he came through that okay. That was frightening, I didn't know because of how long he didn't have oxygen, if he was, going to have any damage. But thank God he came through that okay. And our situation is actually better than a lot of other kids. Some of these kids have multiple seizures daily. So, we just want to get the word out that this is, a disorder that's out there. We're trying to raise awareness and with the walk, try to raise funds and also, bring the TS community together, connecting with other families, because it's such a rare disorder that, if when you connect with another family that has it, it's like, wow, it touches you. So that's where we're coming from today with this, proclamation.
Thank you both so much. I just want to jump in here. Mr. Lyons contacted us a few weeks ago and requested that we make an official proclamation in West Goshen to recognize tuberous sclerosis and make it an awareness day. And just from one parent to another, I commend you and your whole family just for your bravery throughout this whole fight. I had never heard of this before, and you're right. For a disease to be more common than Lou Gehrig's disease and to have not heard of it is astounding to me. I just appreciate you reaching out to us really from the bottom of my heart. And I am so happy to make this an official day to help your family, to help all of the kids and people who suffer from this, and to try and find a way to find a cure for this. I'm very happy to do this. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're making the motion then, Ashley, for this resolution?
So Keith, should we read the proclamation or should this just be something that's adopted?
You can do it. You can do either. You can adopt it or read it.
Yeah, I think we should read it so that it's in the record.
I agree. Robin, did you want to do that?
No, I want you to do it. From one mother to another mother.
Yeah. Okay, so today, and the date is May 19th. Am I right on that? Who knows anymore? May 19th, 2020. It shall be proclaimed, whereas an estimated 50,000 Americans and 1 million people worldwide have been diagnosed with tuberous sclerosis complex, a genetic disease with no cure. And whereas tuberous sclerosis complex is often a devastating disorder that causes tumors to form in vital organs, including the brain, heart, kidneys, skin, liver, and lungs. And whereas the disease is also the leading genetic cause of both epilepsy and autism. And whereas tuberous sclerosis complex affects some people severely and others so mildly it often goes undiagnosed. And whereas the incidence of TSC is as common as Lou Gehrig's disease or cystic fibrosis, increased awareness is vital. And whereas the Tuberous Sclerosis Alliance and other groups around the world have joined together to promote awareness of the disorder to ensure people with TSC get the best possible treatment and proper diagnosis. Now, therefore, the West Goshen Township Board of Supervisors do hereby proclaim, I'm going to say May 19th, 2020. I'm sorry, May 15th as the official day, Tuberous Sclerosis Complex Global Awareness Day. Throughout, and urge all of our citizens to support the search for a cure and assist those individuals and families who deal with this challenging disease on a daily basis.
Thank you for reading it. And thank you, Lion family, for sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Shouldn't we just take a vote on that, Robin, just to make that official?
Yes. So we need a motion.
So I will make a motion that we pass the proclamation to make May 15th the official Tuberous Sclerosis Complex Global Awareness Day.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any public comment? Hearing none, we will have voice vote. I'll start. Robin says aye. Sean?
Sean says aye.
John?
Aye.
Hugh?
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. You're welcome. Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're almost towards the end of the evening. Let me see what I just did with my agenda. All right, item number 11 is the resolution 8-2020 real estate taxes dates changes. Kind of a mouthful. So we have a draft resolution that has not been finalized, so that it's still an opportunity now during this discussion to make amendments or to rewrite some of the language here with respect to what we end up deciding on. So this is a resolution, and we have not had any deliberative conversations about two items. One is the 2% discount rate, to extend that, and the other is to waive fees or penalties associated with late payment of the tax. So we have each learned more about the issues related to 2%, as well as the waiver, what this county has done, what neighboring townships have done. But we need to make a decision on our own behalf on how we'd like to see things move forward. So the first area where we need to make a decision or discuss at the moment is the third paragraph of the current draft resolution, which says, now therefore be it resolved, the township hereby extends the period in which it will collect the tax imposed on the assessed value of real estate at the township's prescribed discount rate of 2% through, and then it says it's a blank. So I think as a board,
May I make a comment?
yes, you may.
I'm strongly opposed to that. It's a slap in the face to the majority of people who have already paid at the discount rate because of the date they had. I don't think it's necessary at all, and is just. I just think that whole paragraph should be struck.
Okay. Does anyone else want to make a comment specifically on that paragraph?
I'll make a comment on that. We had some discussion with some of the staff there at the township, the finance director and the treasurer, and the average tax bill was like $450. 2% of that comes to like $9. So that's really not a great help of any great extent for our residents. So I would agree with you on that one. I think we can strike that part of this resolution as far as giving the extension on the 2% discount.
I also do not support including this paragraph, because in conversation with township staff and the finance team, this would be a very burdensome requirement on them to look at who's paid their real estate taxes in May here at face value, and then to go back and have to try to manage through escrow accounts, etc., a small credit to all these individual accounts is problematic and a waste of staff time. So in addition to the two comments already made, I do not support it either.
Ashley.
I agree, and I think it's also important to highlight that as of just last week, or when we talked to finance, we'd received something like 90% of the payments already anyway within the 2% discount period. So I agree. I don't think that there's any reason to extend the 2% discount period.
Okay, we will go through roll call. I will start. I agree to remove that paragraph from this resolution. Sean?
I agree to remove it.
Ashley?
Yes, I agree to remove it as well.
John,
Yeah, I agree.
Hugh. You have to say you agree. That's what you want to do, Hugh. Did we lose him?
Yeah, I don't know where he is.
Hold on a second. I think he may have disconnected himself. Just give me a second.
Okay.
Yes, Hugh has disconnected his phone from the meeting.
Okay, so we have
We can-
4 votes.
Yeah, you have a quorum. You can continue with the meeting.
So we can go ahead and wait to see if he comes back, if he wants to vote. All right, that'll be the last person to vote.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then the next paragraph is, be it further resolved that the township hereby waives any fees or penalties associated with the late payment of the tax imposed on the assessed value of real estate, provided that the tax is paid in its entirety by, and that's where the open-ended date is, as to when we would want to see, when we would waive the penalties, up until what time period we would do so. I think we've had some discussions around what other townships are doing in terms of what they have done, but we as a board have not decided what we think is the right time frame to say the tax needs to be paid. Maybe before the end of the year, as opposed to being at the end of the year, to be doing so earlier at the end of the year. So maybe August, September timeframe for requesting that the rest of the taxpayers make good on their payments, and then we would waive the fees, which would be a benefit in a significant way, because there's a 10% penalty if there'll be another $45 on top of their bill if they were to go beyond then. So any thoughts and ideas that want to be shared by any board member, please let me know how to get started here.
Well, let me
I'll
just,
start it off if you want.
can I give a little
I'd
background to
suggest,
this?
yeah, I was going to say, I'd suggest October 31st as a extension date.
So October 31st. Okay, John, you were about to speak.
Well, I was just going to say a little background on this. The governor signed Act 15 back on April 19th, I believe it was. No, April the 20th, which allowed the townships to do what we're discussing now, and that is to extend the deadlines for property taxes. And they allowed the face value to be extended without penalty until the end of the year. And some, well, for example, Westchester Borough had a special session last week or so on May the 12th, and they decided unanimously to extend the deadline until the end of the year. Now, I've had discussion, and Sean and I believe some of the other supervisors have had discussion with the township employees about what effect this may have upon our finances. It would have a very minimal effect as far as the amount of monies that are realized by the township in prior years by extending the deadline later than from what it is currently, that is the end of June. The estimation was it would be about $16,000 that the township potentially could lose if we extended the deadline to the end of the year, and also extended the 2% discount as well until August. So the amount of money we're talking about here would be even less than the estimation of $16,000, be considerably less than that even. And really what we're talking about here is providing some small measure of relief to those within our township who are most impacted by this incredible period that we're going through right now, this pandemic. The overwhelming majority have already paid their real estate taxes. We're only talking, I think at the end of April, it was 86.6% of township residents had already paid their real estate taxes at the end of April. And more were already being paid by the time we were speaking to them in early March. So we're only looking at less than probably 10% of the population that may be impacted by this extension. But it's precisely that percentage of that population within our township that could be most impacted by this pandemic. And I think those people there, we do need to offer what we can in a way of some relief. So that's my feeling about it. I think we definitely need to extend this deadline for the face value due without penalty. I'm open to suggestions here to come to a consensus on the board as to when that would be. If it's the end of October or the end of September, I would be open to either one of those, but I think it definitely we need to extend the deadline.
Sean, Ashley, any comments?
Go ahead, Ashley.
So yes, I agree that we should extend the deadline for waiving the penalty. Can somebody just explain to me again why doing it at the end of the year wouldn't work for us?
Well, without having the details in front of me, the concern that I had was related to the fact that when we're doing our budget cycle, towards the end of the year, things get very, very busy in terms of pulling all the data together, including organizations like the Delaware Valley Health Trust, what the premiums are going to be like going forward and the costs and the packaging. And so that takes up a lot of time from the staff. I also get concerned about if we don't have an earlier deadline, we also then have the opportunity potentially to be able to evaluate how many people still have not paid. Because we do have a concern, I have a concern that if they still don't pay by December 31st, and again, this is all, based on what could possibly happen, because if things aren't better then anyway, they still may not be able to pay. And then it puts the township in a position of potentially having to place liens on their property. And I find that to be much more aggressive and hurtful than, trying to find a way to encourage them to take care of it before the end of the year. Because that means then we start spending money to go out and place those liens. And they can be very difficult if we, are dealing with people who are still really struggling. I never want to be in that position where we have to do that. So that was my point of view on the situation, that the earlier we could set the time frame as the last time period, if you count from the end of April all the way to October, I think it's 5 or 6 months. I'm doing the math not in my head, but it would be still another extension of a significant amount of time to pay down the $450 that the average, it sounds like, is.
And also, if I can just interject there, I had some discussion with our tax collector, Bill Keenan, on just the logistical end of all this, what it would mean to extend this. If we did have a deadline that is before the end of the year, it would then allow the tax collector to send out delinquency notices to those who have not yet paid. And if we wait until after December, then we get in December 31st, then we get into the lien period, which again, I agree with Robert. We don't want folks to get into that. We want to incentivize people to pay their taxes before the end of the year, before we have to get into a lien. So if we extended the due date until the end of October, it would give the tax collector the 2 months there to be able to send out letters to these folks to say, hey, look, we need your taxes paid. Otherwise, after December 31st, we're looking at lien proceedings. So that would be just a logistical concern.
Those are both reasons. Those are both reasons why I proposed the 1031.
If I could just interject one point of clarification. Hugh, can I interject just one point of clarification?
Sure.
Once December 31st hits, if the taxes have not been paid, the township sends a tax duplicate to the tax claim bureau, and your tax collector no longer has the power to collect the tax. It now becomes the tax claim bureau's obligation to collect the tax. So unlike liens for sewer or trash, the township doesn't file the liens for unpaid taxes. That's something the Tax Claim Bureau does on your behalf. I don't think that necessarily
Right.
implicates what date you should be choosing, but you're not spending money to file liens for unpaid taxes. I do think there is, as you mentioned, somebody mentioned, a motivation to allow your tax collector to send delinquency notices between, say, for example, November, December, so that it doesn't go to the Tax Claim Bureau. Because once it goes to the Tax Claim Bureau, the property owner does then incur additional fees for the Tax Claim Bureau's costs and expenses.
Mhm.
So, but you're still saying it's advisable to give the tax collector that time.
Yes, I think that I'm not sure all property owners understand that a lot of times, maybe February or March the following year, they think that they can still go back to the township. And basically the township loses the ability at that point in time. It really is up to the Tax Claim Bureau to do all the collection. So I do think if there's sort of a friendly reminder letter, hey, the board did extend it until such and such a date, but now you basically have 2 more months before it's turned over the tax claim and have additional fees and penalties be incurred. So I do think I like that idea of having your own, keep it in-house for a period of time for the remaining months of 2020.
This is Sean. That's a really good point Kristen just made. I don't think people are aware of that potential extra cost of just waiting and waiting. So I agree with everything that's been said so far with regard to providing an extension of the period. Having listened to the conversation, I'm okay with a 4-month extension of the face value, which would take us from the end of June through the end of October. As Casey said earlier, we're 10 weeks into this. If we don't start to really try to, reopen, if you like, or have opportunities for people, it's going to be another 6 to 8 weeks before things might start really moving in that direction. So that's 16 weeks there. So a 4-month extension of face value payment would seem entirely reasonable. I do like the idea of having, if you like, an incentive to pay by the end of October, because as you go into the November, December time period, there are a lot of distractions for people. There are a lot of extra costs that come into people's budgets, and it does encourage people to think about making sure they pay their real estate taxes by the end of October if they know that there will be a fee imposed beyond that point. And I like the idea of us still being able to use the tax collector to provide that delinquency notice and the information that extra fees would be incurred if they don't pay before the end of the year. So that's what I would support at this point.
Okay, so
I'll make the motion that the resolution number 8 of 2020 be adopted without the provision for 2% discount, but with the further discount being, our regular period being extended to 10/31.
I'll second that motion.
okay, was that Sean seconding?
Well,
Yes.
Sean or myself, whichever.
It was a tie. Okay, pick one.
Casey, you got it right?
Yep, I got Sean as the second. He was a split second in front of John.
All right, let's open it up for public comment.
Yes, this is Doug, public comment. In agreement.
Thank you, Doug. Are there any other residents who would like to have public comment? All right, hearing none. We'll do the roll call vote. We'll start with Hugh.
I'm in favor. Aye.
John.
Having made the motion.
Aye.
Ashley.
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
Robin. Aye. All right, thank you very much for that.
I have a question before we leave this. Casey, how will this be advertised to the general public, and how will people know this?
Well, my first job, I'm actually going to do it tonight, is to contact Bill Keenan, the tax collector. We have to notify him by law by tomorrow, I think 5 o'clock. We'll push this out on every platform that we have, social media, website. We're putting out our monthly e-newsletter on Friday, so it'll be in there as well. So we'll push it out on every avenue that we have.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next item, item number 12. Thank you, Mark, for hanging in here all these hours. Would you like to go ahead and share with us the information? Oh, I guess, Casey, you're presenting this?
Sure.
This
We
is
have Dave
Township
Woodward, of
Paving
course,
Program.
Mark Bertolami, and Al Vinatelli with us as well. From
Okay.
Carroll Engineering on the line in case you have more questions. We opened bids on Thursday, May 14th for the 2020 paving program. We've been working on the on those bid documents for about 5 months with survey and everything else. The bid results showed our lowest bid prices in at least 5 years, with Allen Myers coming in as the low bidder at $652,220. Again, the township is allocated liquid fuels tax funds from the state for all our road taxes, which can only be used for paving. We can't use it for any general fund expenses. So this comes in well under budget of our $750,000 that we had budgeted out of liquid fuels. I won't speak for Al Vinatelli, but Carroll Engineering recommended the board to award this contract to Allen Myers for that bid amount. And I will speak for Dave and Mark, but they can check in with us. They concur as well, as do I. Allen Myers has done several of our paving projects here over the past 14 years. And this year it's about 5.1 miles, mostly in the south for this year. So we're just looking for discussion and approval.
Casey, this is Sean. I have a question or a couple of questions on this one. So I noticed that there are several streets off Ellis Lane that are in the paving program for this year. But of the neighborhood, there seems to be one road that's not going to be done. And I was wondering why it was not on the list, since it seems to be pretty contiguous with all the other streets in that neighborhood. And that is Joy Lane.
Dave, if you want to pipe in.
Sean, this is Dave. We actually paved that piece of Joy Lane 3-4 years ago. It was in such bad shape it had to be attended to then. But actually, Aqua approached us right before, the day before the paving was advertised. And we actually, Aqua wants to go through the Box Elder neighborhood this year to put water main in. So we actually pulled Box Elder out, and Mark substituted Green Hill, Ashbridge, Countryside, that area. We're just flip-flopping from one year to the next. And the incentive of that too is Aqua, as part of their restoration, is going to pay us for half the overlay of Box Elder next year.
Okay, so the list in the board packet here has changed then, right, is what you're
You
saying?
must have gotten the old list.
Yeah, because Box Elder's definitely on this list.
Yeah, you got the old list. The Box Elder neighborhood is out. It's Ashbridge, Countryside, Stillwood, and Green Hill. That was a last minute substitution on the bid.
Is it still 5.1 miles total?
It's 5.18.
Okay. And then my second question is, so we're under the budgeted amount from these bids if we go with Allen Myers. Does that mean there are additional funds available for other paving or not? Do we only
we would have to rebid as a separate project. It's something to look at. Couple factors to keep in mind. We're subject to escalation clause with liquid fuels. So we're at record low oil prices right now. If they were to spike up, we'll get hit with an upcharge. And every year, just about on every project, we run into an area somewhere where we're going to have to do an area of total restoration. Once we get all these dump trucks in the neighborhood, mill, it'll blow a section of road apart. So to have a little cushion is a good thing.
And what about the project that we had in flight that was related to repaving, restriping Boot Road over at Wilson Drive up to up to Green Hill there? Is that going to happen this year? And is it part of a bid process that's yet to come?
It's still on the radar. We were hoping to have it in on this bid, but with PennDOT with COVID, we were having trouble. Carol had submitted some changes, and they wanted some changes, and we weren't getting the information back from PennDOT, so we actually cut that off. That is a possibility to do that as a separate project.
Are we managing that project, or would East Goshen manage it?
Well, we were originally gonna tag it onto this project, so then it would be managed through us. It probably will be managed through us, but that's still to be determined.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
I have a question for Dave, just following up from that. There's almost $100,000 difference between what's budgeted and what's being potentially awarded here. Where would, I understand you want to have a cushion. Does that money have to be used within this year's budget?
No.
Or does it just go away?
No, anything left over will roll into next year.
Okay, so it's like you just added into the following year. Okay.
Right.
So can I just ask a quick question of Al related to the Boot Road restriping process? What's the timetable for that?
The issue we ran into on Boot Road was that in this last review, which is I think the third review from PennDOT, they came up with a new request, and that was to do traffic counts for the intersection of Green Hill and Boot Road for the signalization. With the current situation, everybody working at home and schools being out and everything, it's impossible to get an accurate traffic count at that intersection. So that's been the holdup there. We haven't been able to, up to now, get other options of getting older traffic studies that have studied that intersection. Once we get that, then we can extrapolate to today's numbers from an older report, and then we can resubmit to PennDOT and hopefully get their approval. One thing I would like to add on that, Boot Road is a PennDOT road, so it is not subject to liquid fuels funding. So that the 100,000 that's under budget right now cannot be used toward that. Will not get reimbursement from liquid fuels for that.
Thank you for sharing that update.
Al, I have a
Madam
question on
Chair,
it.
Margie has a
I have
question.
a question for Al on that, if you don't mind.
Okay, we had too many people talking at once. Sean, you just want to quickly say that again, and then Lisa jumped in to say that Margie would like to make a comment.
Okay, Al, just on that, waiting for PennDOT and the whole traffic count thing and how confusing and delayed that might be. Is there any way we could decouple the repaving, restriping from the signal situation, or is it just got to be a package together?
It's got to be packaged together because we're restriping and adding turn and right turn lanes, a left turn lane, and the whole thing is the intersection is being done. So we have to have signalization done with that also.
Okay.
Thanks, Al. Go ahead, Margie.
Does the bid include labor and material, or is this just a material cost?
No, it's an in-place contract. Contractor is actually paid to mill and overlay.
Okay, so are Alan Myers employees used or township employees used?
No, it's all contract personnel.
I can't understand.
It's all Alan Myers contractors.
Okay, so our road employees aren't involved in the repaving of any of this?
No, we'll have some out there for inspection and whatnot, but not the actual physical work.
Okay, and then I also saw where the prevailing wage is a requirement. So that's already baked into the bid as well?
Yeah, that's in the bid document.
I was just curious if our employees are working as part of the site work, does that change their salaries in any way?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Open up my mic. Are there any other comments from residents regarding this approval?
Yes, this is Doug. Do we have to take Allen Myers because they're the low bidder, or is there an option to take Duraco or one of the others?
Nope, this is a low bid, Doug. We cannot violate state law and award it to another bidder. We'll be sued in about 10 seconds.
Okay. Okay.
And-
Yeah, I thought so. I just wanted to, I was just curious, that's all.
Sure.
And I guess we can, with our inspections, we can maintain that they built a spec and to what they're supposed to do.
That's why we have full-time inspection. When I got here 14 years ago, I instituted full-time inspection on our paving because if you see some of our older roads, they're driveways essentially. And I see Dave shaking his head yes. So
Yeah.
full-time inspection.
We're one of the only municipalities that does the lab testing and the compaction testing.
Yeah. But it'd be nice to see Duraco since they're hometown, but if Myers can do it, so be it. That's all right.
Okay, so I think we need a motion, or do we already do that?
I'll make the motion that we accept the bid from Allen Myers.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any additional public comment on this matter?
Margie does.
Okay, Margie, go ahead.
Would you kindly place the roads on the website, please? That are
Yeah, we were
scheduled.
waiting to do that until it was reported tonight. We'll do that tomorrow.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. John, can you start the roll call?
Aye.
Hugh,
Yes.
Sean,
Aye.
Ashley,
Aye.
Robin, aye. Okay, looks like we're getting to the bottom of the items to be reviewed again. Yeah, so number 13 is the approval of the April 30th, 2020 Treasurer's Report.
I'll make a motion, we approve the Treasurer's Report of April 2020.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second, Sean.
Okay, thank you.
But I have a question.
Pardon?
I have a question. for
Okay.
Casey.
Go ahead.
Casey, on the sewer revenue fund,
Sure.
the manuals at 1.28 million this month, did that include the principal and interest for the bond payment? You know,
Sean, are you there?
yeah. Can you hear me,
Uh-oh.
Casey?
Could you turn it up? Okay, Sean, could you repeat that again?
Yeah, on the treasurer's report for the sewer revenue fund, one of the manuals was $1.281 million payment. Was that for the principal and interest payment on the bond?
Yes, as far as I know it is. I will double check that though, first thing in the morning and let you know. As far as I know, yes.
Okay.
I have a question for Casey. Did I miss the Belfour cleaning charge is listed here in this report?
Yes, it's should be on the manual check report. And
Okay.
also we had another police charge of about $725. So we had essentially in total 3 separate invoices. 2 were combined. The large first building disinfection And then we had them back actually 2 days in a row to re-clean cars and one of the cells, I believe. And you can see the $33,000 charge and then the $725 charge.
Okay. What expenditures, including those you just mentioned, are COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic related?
Sure. We've ever since March, 11th, 12th, we've had to purchase PPE and other extraneous items. Inside the budget, we've made other cuts to cover that. Masks, PPE, hand sanitizer, things that we, typically wouldn't have tons of stuff here. We're probably, for the PPE, probably in the $10,000 range. And then the Belfour expenses of $33,000. So we'll be submitting all of that to PEMA for that 75% reimbursement.
When do you think, Casey, when do you think you'll have that, that number?
We're compiling all the receipts now. I mean, for example, we bought, we had to buy thermometers to check employees' temperatures here. So we're compiling all the receipts probably in the next week or so.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, if we didn't have that Belfour expense initially, we'd be in pretty good shape. But again, typically, I mean, as a reimbursement, and Dave, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, we'll spend $100,000 on a bad snowstorm or blizzard. So for us to spend $40,000 on a now 10-week long declaration of emergency, I think we're doing okay.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Madam Chair, let's see, Ryan has a question.
I do, just quick regarding the Belfour invoice. I'm assuming that's product and labor included in that in one number.
Yeah, that was for them to send out a crew of probably 20 people that initial first sanitation or sanitizing day to do probably 60, 70,000 square feet of our offices, police station, parks, and public works buildings.
Doug, you have a question?
I'm okay with it.
Okay. Margie.
Since the Belfour contract was outside of the budget, what were the requirements in hiring them?
I don't understand what you mean by requirements.
Well, it's my understanding if an expenditure wasn't in the budget, then you would need board approval. I understand the circumstances are a little bit different in this case, but did you seek board approval for that expenditure before hiring them?
No, the board actually signed their disaster declaration before we hired Belfour. So I had the latitude to do whatever I had to make these buildings safe.
Okay, and did you do phone quotes and get 2 or 3 quotes, or did you just?
Margie, we had to clean our buildings immediately after the exposure of our 4 officers. No one was offering the service except Belfour within 24 hours.
Okay, was there a?
And that's actually one of the reasons, Ms. Ford, one of the reasons why the emergency declaration was put into place was to avoid the procurement laws under the Commonwealth statutes. So that's exactly why municipalities, one of the chief reasons why municipalities do the declaration of emergency, because they don't allow for the public bid process to occur in emergency situations.
Okay, figured that was the case. Was there a written protocol under this situation as far as exactly what needed to be done? Like, did you know what we were getting that was different than our regular cleaning contractor?
Well, Dave Woodward was there the day that they came. This was completely out of usual for any municipal building to be cleaned. They didn't just come in and wipe down surfaces. They fogged everything. It was a complete sanitizing of our buildings. It wasn't just a cleaning company coming in and vacuuming, if you understand what I'm saying.
It was somebody like
they wiped everything down. They fogged. It was a complete effort to eradicate any possibility of virus being in these buildings. So there is no protocol. Belfour has a protocol for cleaning, suicide scenes, homicide scenes, and they were here to sanitize our buildings. That's what they did.
So there was somebody licensed, like a licensed industrial hygienist on site?
Yes, there was a third-party company actually here observing and making sure that Belfour was doing the proper procedure.
Okay. And then the whole job, you said, just took one day with 40 or 60?
No, they were here most of the day Friday, and they came in for 5-6 hours on Saturday.
Okay. All right. All right, that was my one question about that. And then I also noticed that there wasn't as much detail on hotel expenditures. Usually in the treasurer's report, it'll say the name of the hotel and the location, the city and the state. And in this month's treasurer's report, all the hotel charges just listed hotel with the rate. And I would hate to see that step of transparency be eliminated from the treasurer's report. So I hope going forward we can make sure that information is included.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ryan, do you have another question?
I do. Just a little bit of a follow-up question to the Belfour. Is there someone who's responsible for creating the policies and procedures so that when we reopen for business as Great American Patriots in June, that when someone comes in and tests positive again, that we're not going through another $31,000 expense, and is those procedures being created now and available for review, as well as tracking of who this person or where this person went through the township? So we're not re-cleaning all 70,000 square feet.
We've actually been operating here since March 11th. We never closed, except to the public. We have very specific guidelines that our employees follow that were put in place immediately upon March 12th, essentially. We closed for March 12th, March 13th, but we've been here ever since. So all those guidelines have been in place since mid-March.
Are those available to share with that we can use in our own places and businesses as best industry practice?
Just following the CDC guidelines. We're doing nothing more than anybody else.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Margie?
Whoops, one of the things you might want to do is if you look, can I make in response to that gentleman's comment? If you look on the PSAT's website, they have a lot of good guidance. You can adapt it to private businesses, but that may be a resource for you to look at.
Okay.
I didn't understand.
Lisa, do we have any other public comment?
Doug, another one? No,
I'm okay.
good.
The treasurer's report.
I'd like to ask a question, follow up. Casey, you mentioned you're compiling a list of those expenditures which are COVID-19 related so that you can pursue reimbursement for them. Share that with us when you get that list together, and also what your game plan is and how you're going to pursue reimbursement. That whole possibility, of course, is unfolding even as we speak. There's things that keep on changing. New government programs seem to be making themselves available, but certainly is an avenue that needs to be pursued. But if I can also ask, what expenses have been saved during this period that we're going through due to the shutdown compared to normal, and what expenses could be saved by department do you estimate that could be saved going into the future? The reason why I ask is because while a lot of our employers in the area have been able to survive this period quite well, fortunately, we have a rather diverse tax base. The concern is looking at a quarter down the road where we may begin feeling the effects of the unemployment that we're experiencing right now and what that might impact us as far as our tax revenues into the township. Just that we put ourselves in a better position to be able to prepare for a possible eventuality of a downsized revenue, how can we address that? So if I can ask if you can put together a list also what expenses have been saved during this period and what could be saved looking forward as we go dealing with this situation in the months that are facing us.
Yeah, we're actively doing that on a daily basis. Just as an example, fuel use is down remarkably, police department and us, due to the shutdown. And we are paying less than $1 per gallon for gasoline right now, due to the drop in oil prices. Nobody's been really going to any conferences, so all those expenses have been saved. PSATS was canceled. That was a big expenditure of ours to send the board to the PSATS conference. That's several $1,000s saved. So we're looking at everything that we can to ensure the budget is as good as we can.
Okay, if we don't have any other public comment, I think we have a motion and a second, and we need to finish the vote. So John, I'll start with you. Related to the treasurer's report, approving the treasurer's report.
The motion on the floor is to recommend approval of the report, correct?
Correct. You just need to vote aye that we're going to approve the treasurer's report for April.
Aye.
Okay, and Hugh?
Aye.
Ashley?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Robin? Aye. Okay, that's the last titled item for this evening, but there is still open opportunity for
Robin, if I can, I had two things I wanted to put into the public comment area.
That's
the first is that I attended the UPS parade honoring the drivers as essential people on May the 7th, and I took one of my antique cars, the red and white Pontiac, to lead the parade. Had the area business manager for UPS as a passenger. The second thing I'd like to report on was that on May the 16th, I helped the VFW place flags on the graves of the veterans in the Oakland Cemetery, the St. Agnes Cemetery, and also in Birmingham Friends I did individually. So I'm done.
Well, thank you for doing that. You've always been a supporter of our military and our frontline responders.
I saw that in the Daily Local. That's really wonderful.
Oh yeah, I missed the Daily Local. Yeah,
You
channel
better go
20.
look for it. All right.
Channel 29. Channel 29 covered the UPS parade. They put us on TV, so but I had fun doing it. It was interesting.
Well, thanks for representing.
I'm done.
All right. All right. So do we have any additional public comment for this evening?
Margie?
Okay, Margie, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I know before the pandemic shut everything down, it was scheduled that we were going to have Barbicane Thornton attend. I believe it was going to be April's meeting or something. Is there going to be an opportunity to have them possibly on next month's call or a separate meeting where they might be able to be available for questions or their presentation?
Well, I originally had mentioned that this is what we would plan to do, and Casey was going to line them up. But obviously, events overtook us with regard to our priorities here with the COVID-19 situation. Actually, I'm quite impressed with how smoothly these go-to meetings have gone, and I'm open, if the rest of the board are okay with it, to say, why don't we try having Barbicane come to our either our June workshop session or our June regular meeting and do what we'd originally asked them to do and do that presentation.
Yeah, I think it's worth exploring. It's worth checking out.
Yeah, definitely. Just line them up.
I completely agree.
Yeah, they've been ready to go until we had this, and we weren't sure about the technology. So it's been going very well the way it's been set up. So I think it's the right time. I'd recommend it for June.
So Casey, you'll
I
line
had-
up Bobby Kane for the June Wednesday meeting, or you want to do it at the regular?
It has to be at the regular. It's too important to be buried on the Wednesday.
Yeah,
Agreed.
Many people are showing up now this time of year to begin with. So yeah, I'd like
Yep.
to put it on the general meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, and we only have 15 minutes at the workshop meeting, so.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had one final question.
Okay.
And the final question is, the yard waste I know has been spread out over 2 or 3 days. What's the status of that?
The yard waste, again, it's ridiculously high. Everybody's home, so everybody's pulling every twig and leaf out of their yard. And I might venture a guess that Republic is short-staffed, but we're working on it to get it done as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's in the contract, though. They can't mix it with the regular trash, right?
No. It's a totally separate trucks. It does not get commingled.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Robin, can I say something, please?
Yes, you may.
Okay. I have an announcement. I'd like to give a recognition to Ralph Verno. We lost Ralph Verno last week. Ralph Verno was a longtime former West Goshen resident. Ralph was on the Goshen Fire Police for many years, and he was a former math professor at West Chester University. The Vernos lived on Edward Lane for many years, probably from the 60s up until early 2000s. And I just wanted to send condolences to the Vernos. He was a huge West Goshener, a huge fan of my dad. And in fact, the family, I was one of the first that they called because Ralph, he and my father had huge, many conversations over the years about our township. And Ralph was a huge public servant. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that story.
Thank you so much, Doug.
One more. Ryan, do you have anything?
I do. One, I'll apologize for being part of the yard waste problem. I'll send a little extra in with my trash bill. With the success of the go-to meetings in this, is this a platform that will be here to stay once we return to normalcy for the public to see? It's a little better interface in the YouTube site because you can, respond and interact versus YouTube. You're just kind of watching from a distance.
Yes, we're going to unfortunately have to make these decisions as we go through the coronavirus. Ideally, we'd like to be in person, but knowing how effective this has been thus far, we still need to get more people to be focused on coming to the website or to this virtual meeting as opposed to waiting to have to hear about it after the fact.
Yeah.
So thanks for your comment. And do I have a second to adjourn?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, stay safe, everyone. Take care of yourselves.
Thank you.
Have a good week. All right.
Thanks, Casey. Thanks, board.
Bye.
Stay well.
Everybody.
Good night.
All right, bye-bye.